Any headphone manufacturers out there want to give me sponsorship? These are finally starting to die after 5.5 years of abuse. Hello everybody and welcome to Bit More Dave. Bit more of a somber discussion today because I wanted to talk about the whole Roald Dahl situation.
Bring it on.
It's worrying, quite frankly.
Now let's see.
And yes, I am fully aware before we get started that I'm covered in hair, all right? I had to give the rabbit his medicine. There's hair everywhere. I'm fully aware of this. Let's just move on. Before we get fully into it, I should probably explain a little bit as to who Roald Dahl is for anybody who is not familiar. I need to get my glasses on first things first, okay? So, Roald Dahl was a writer. He died about a year before I was born. He was a British novelist, but he flew I think he flew a Gloucester, and he flew a Hawker Hurricane as well. So he survived the wars, and he survived the wars fairly well. Later in his career, he did unfortunately develop a bit of stereotyping to do with women and race. So unfortunately, that was a bit of a problem. Not the best of guys. So now that that's out of the way, let's talk a little bit about legacy, though, because he is the writer of, or was the writer of some of the greatest books ever made. And that's not to forget the sort of more questionable things he wrote about, obviously, but we need to talk about his influence for, well, the whole of Britain. Roald Dahl's novels are quite crazy, frankly. James and the Giant Peach, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Fantastic Mr. Fox, Danny, the Champion of the World, my personal favourite of his books, George's Marvellous Medicine, The Big Friendly Giant, or the BFG, The Witches, Matilda. These are all of his most famous novels, but there's some other ones as well. He wrote some non-fiction too, some biographical work, and to be honest, in terms of children's books, I'd probably put him on par with Tolkien, to be honest with you. I know that sounds crazy, but he is, that's how influential he is. A lot of his books were also illustrated by Quentin Blake for this absolutely incredibly famous art style. Nothing really quite like it. And Quentin Blake, believe it or not, is still alive. He's 90 years old, but he's still going. But why is this person being talked about today? Well, because the publisher has thought it necessary to edit his original works. I can't describe to you how, not even offensive, how ridiculous this is. Aside from a direct translation, books shouldn't really have their content changed. Even the most dreadful books that you can possibly imagine, fictional certainly. Imagine going to the Mona Lisa and actually painting over it, because it's not quite high definition enough. Imagine going to the Sistine Chapel and thinking that actually we should modernize it. Instead of having angels, we should have planes flying around. The publisher of Roald Dahl's books and his incredible novels have decided to change words, sentences, and outcomes of books that were written by Roald Dahl to better suit a modern audience. I shouldn't really have to explain how moronic this is. Imagine watching The Matrix, and instead of Neo going, guns, lots of guns.
Guns. Lots of guns.
He goes something like, we are going to need more offensive weaponry to take on this task that we are about to unfold upon.
Well, that's just stupid.
How ridiculous would that be? Imagine an architect going to the Arc de Triomphe and going, do you know what? This actually isn't that practical. We should probably put a bridge above the archway. That way it's holding something up. You think I'm being silly, but I'm really not. Imagine learning about historical English literature. My wife has a degree in English language. She loves to read. I love to read. It gets your imagination going, gets those juices flowing. And it's and it's something completely different as to what the writer actually wrote. Samantha Smith here has published some of the changes herself. There are more, apparently hundreds. Here's an example from Matilda. So on the 2001 edition, she went on an olden day sailing ships with Joseph Conrad. She went to Africa with Ernest Hemingway and to India with Rudyard Kipling. And yes, it is Rudyard Kipling. It's not Rudyard. The 2022 edition, however, she went to the 19th century estates with Jane Austen. She went to Africa with Ernest Hemingway and California with John Steinbeck. If somebody is sitting at home right now and thinking, this isn't a big deal, they've changed some words, it's ridiculous. This is almost an attempt to change history.
Because I teach it.
Yeah, no, I do. Okay, we have to dip into the camera. So this is my wife, okay? And what do you do as your daily job? Say that a bit louder.
I'm a primary school teacher.
Fantastic. What do you have a degree in?
English.
And what did you do at university that means that, to get this English degree?
I studied English language.
Fantastic. Almost as if we have somebody here who was made to discuss about this. So,
I'm literally teaching Charlie and the Chocolate Factory at the moment.
You're teaching Charlie and the Chocolate Factory at the moment.
It's a year 4
classic book.
text.
My favourite is, I've got two favourites. I've got George's Marvellous Medicine. Danny, Champion of the World. Danny, Champion of the World is my absolute favourite Roald Dahl book. Here's the thing, right? What do you think about changing these words in a story?
What's the point?
What's the point? Yeah. To make it easier to understand, to maybe erase some racial issues. What do you think about that?
They're talking points to have with the children you're reading them with.
So when you're teaching them these books, let's say there's a moment in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. In fact, I'll find it. So in regards to the Oompa Loompas, it says, so I shipped them over here. Every man, every woman, every child in the Oompa Loompa tribe has been changed to, so they all agreed to come over, each and every Oompa Loompa.
So that's the teaching point of that there used to be a slave trade. That's the teaching point.
An African slave trade.
You talk to your children that used to be a slave trade. There used to be a thing where people were brought over from different countries and they often came against their will. That is a teaching point. You have to teach that part of history.
If it's okay to do this, then we should erase the VW Beetle from existence, because originally...
stop teaching everything in history that's bad.
Yeah. Because we don't want to learn from history.
Whatever good has come out of learning from history.
Okay, fine. So...
I think my favourite one is in The Witches, where they change the professions. So they talk about, she was some secretary or receptionist or something is the quote. And they've changed it, she was some kind of scientist or something. No, that's a teaching point. In the time that was written, that is what women aspired to be. Now, women aspire to be more, and you can say how awful it was for women in that time period. When I talk about Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and I talk about Augustus Gloop and how Roald Dahl uses the word fat a lot in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, you talk about how he's making the point of there are people who have a lot more and they're greedy. That's the point he's trying to make. That's the literary point he's trying to make. But he's put it in there because it also makes children laugh. The word fat makes children laugh. It does.
There you go. Apparently, the word fat has been removed from all of Roald Dahl's books, which is insanity. I am fat. Okay? This beard, that's there to hide the double chin. The hoodie is here to hide the man boobs. My job is sitting down every day. Okay? I try and make special efforts to go to the gym. I really do. A lot. All right. I try and make sure I go for at least a 30-minute uphill walk every single day. But I love food. So I am fat. I don't want to be fat. I want to get better. I want to make sure that my health goes long into the future. So when I eventually have kids, I can play with them and all the rest of it. But why on earth would you remove it from a book? A storybook? Because of this news, I'm going to be buying a used copy of every single one of Roald Dahl's works published before the year 2000, so that I may enjoy these fantastic stories and read them as they were intended to my children when they grow up, and they can pass them on further and further, etc., etc. I want to know, comment section below, what is exactly your thoughts on this? So everybody, hit like if you enjoyed the video and subscribe if you haven't already. Big shout out to Logan and, of course, Maya, my 25 tier patron subscribers, and thanks to all of my patrons. Thank you, Buddha, as well. Buddha, please message me back on Patreon. I want to know, make sure that you're all okay. All right. Is it as crazy as as is it as crazy as you think that I think that this is? Whatever it may be. Thanks.